Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Girl Be Self-ish podcast. I am your podcast host, Chanel McCoy, and I am the CEO and Clinical Director of Oasis Wellness Group. And I am super excited to be back with you all for another episode of our inaugural season of the Girl Be Self-ish podcast. As I've been telling you all season, this podcast was born out of the book anthology project, Girl Be Self-ish, learning to embrace your rhythm of self-care. And all season long, I've just been interviewing the authors who have put their time, their energy, and their effort into this book to make their chapters something that's going to be life-changing for you. And so today I'm super excited because I have another wonderful author, not just an author, but she's also a colleague and one of my fellow cohort members, because we are navigating this school life together as doctoral students. Y'all pray for us as we work through this. But I'm super excited to have Ms. Brittany Hill-Morales on with us today. Hi, Brittany. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so super excited to have you on the podcast. Not just on the podcast, but to have you as one of our authors. I'm gonna let you talk about your chapter, but I just want to give this little sneak peek. Your chapter is one of the chapters. You're the only person that touched on that topic. That's number one. And two, it is so powerful because I've learned that grief is something that so many people are dealing with and nobody knows how to deal with at the same time. So many people are struggling with this idea of grief and allowing themselves to grieve, right? And so I love what your chapter talks about in terms of allowing yourself to have that moment, to take the moments and all of that. So that's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna just say that because I don't want to get into it. We're gonna get into your chapter in a second. But first, Brittany, I start the podcast off every episode the same way. And I asked the authors, what is your personal definition of self-care?
Ooh, self-care, my personal definition. It's basically doing what is necessary to ensure that you're in your window of tolerance or in your space so that you can be the best person that you need to be for yourself. And also if you add the God element for what God is calling you to be. It's doing what is necessary, and it's unique for each individual. What's necessary for me won't be necessary for you. I need massages, maybe you don't. It just varies, but it's doing whatever is necessary for your emotional, physical, spiritual, social, and even professional well-being.
Yeah. I want to go back to, you said the window of tolerance. Explain that to the people, because that is so good when you talk about being within your window of tolerance, because the reality is most people are operating outside of it. So explain that to the people, and then just give us a nugget on how you are able to keep yourself within your window of tolerance.
Yeah, no problem. So the window of tolerance is basically our ability to be able to function. Is when we have eaten what we're supposed to eat throughout the day, made sure we ate, we slept, we're being active, we haven't had too much conflict that day, and we're able to think logically. So we're able to recognize our emotions, but we're also able to say, okay, I can do this. Outside of the window of tolerance is when things go haywire. When you're like, why did I just say that? Why did I just do that? You're not thinking correctly. Your child probably just said mom, and because it was the 25th time they said mom, on top of everything else, you're ready to explode. That's outside of your window of tolerance. Your window of tolerance is when, if they said mom for the 25th time and you had everything kind of in place, would have been like, okay, honey, you called me a few number of times. What's going on? You'll be able to rationalize it and deal with it in a healthier way. But when you're outside of the window of tolerance, everything kind of gets picked up and tossed out the window.
Come on. Yeah, it's like you're talking about like your ability to cope, right? Like your ability, like you said, it's how you function, your ability to manage life. And what I find as a therapist, and I know that you can relate to this, is that most people don't know how to handle life. Like the reason why we have a job, and this is not to shame anybody at all, but the reason why we have a job is because people need assistance in developing their window of tolerance. People need assistance in developing their coping skill set, that toolbox, in order to help them to learn how to deal with life, right? Because oftentimes I see people falter and get thrown off track from the small things. Like, you know, it's like, you ever meet somebody who can't handle nothing? Like, like I don't care what happened. It's like, so you can't handle nothing. Like, you can't handle no frustration. You can't handle, like, I've like gotten to this point in life, like, okay, stuff is gonna happen, right? I can give all of this energy and all of this frustration to something that I can't control, or I can just take up the attitude that life is going to life. Stuff is going to happen, and I don't have to fall apart at the sign of everything that happens, right? And so I love this idea of helping people and training people to operate and learn how to develop your window of tolerance. How did you develop yours?
Oh, that's such a journey. That's such a journey. I think it was step one, being in the classes, different classes. You had to I had to recognize that I was not functioning in a healthy way. That there was dysfunction going on in my world. So in that moment of, okay, something's off, this isn't right, that led me to, okay, so what is right? What should I be leading to? And in a moment of, okay, this is perfectionism, I'm not trying to go there. Let me try to figure out what is healthy. So it's being in my different classes, doing a lot of self-work, self-awareness work, of identifying what works for me and what doesn't.
Okay.
Doing different assessments and learning how to be assertive. That was really hard.
Yeah.
Learning how to be assertive in a good way. How to be assertive in a good way. Because there's assertive in the rah, rah, rah. And there's assertive in the, okay, this is what I need. And being able to say that respectfully.
Yeah.
And following through with it.
Yeah.
Healthy boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said it. I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you said it's a journey. You know, I want to be clear to everybody that's listening, and to every episode of the podcast, or anything that we teach or anything that we say, understand that we are talking about it from a place of it being a journey. We are not talking about any of this from a place of, oh, because I said it, that means you got it and that's it, right? There's a great disparity between how long it may take people to get certain things. There's certain clients that I'll see for 3 months and they're good to go and they're done. And then there are clients that it took us 4 years to get to that place because of the embedded trauma and everything that they're going through, right? And so everybody is different, but whether it takes you that 3 months or it takes you that 4 years or anywhere in between, it's a journey.
It's a journey. It's a process, because you have to undo some things that you learned and you didn't know that you learned. That's all part of the self-awareness too. You learn that this is part of me, and then you have to figure out, how do I remove this? And not only remove it, it has to be replaced. You can't just leave a hole in where you're at. It has to be replaced with something healthier. So it is a journey on discovering how jacked up you probably could be.
Come on.
And then when you realize, okay, I'm this jacked up, I have to replace it with something healthy. And what's healthy, again, for someone else may not be healthy for me.
Yeah. You said something that's so key, and I got to stop right there. You said the things that you learned that you didn't even know you learned.
Yeah.
That's a Selah moment. Like, we just need to stop and just give that space for a second for everybody to think about it. There were things that you learned that you didn't even realize that you learned.
Yeah.
I think about how I remember the first time I realized I sounded like my mother. And certain things that she would say, like certain phrases that she would say. And I was like, oh my gosh, I literally just became my mom. Like, this is something that my mom would say. And not because I was consciously trying to do it. I didn't realize that I was picking up on it. And even stuff like mannerisms. There are certain things that I'll do in my mannerisms. And I'm like, my mom does that. Like, I did. And my husband is like, you do that all the time. I never realized that. Like, we learn so much. And my pastor has this phrase that she says, that some things are caught and not taught. We think we only learn by what we are taught. It's not so. a good majority, if not the greatest portion of our learning, are by the things that we catch. That's why we could be sitting in a car and just hear a song over and over again, and next thing you know, you're singing a word.
Yeah, because
you weren't intentionally sitting there trying to learn this song. I can't tell you how many commercials I didn't learn. I wasn't trying to learn that commercial or that jingle to that commercial, but because I heard it so many times, now it's just embedded in my head, because there's some things that we learn and we didn't even know that we learned. You know, and so there's this process of unlearning that has to happen simultaneously, right? And I think that goes into the self-care. But we could talk about that all day. I do want to transition quickly. I want to talk about your chapter. I think your chapter for me is one of the most powerful chapters in this anthology because of the topic that you're talking about. So tell us the name of your chapter and then give us just a snippet, right? Not all of it, because they got to get the book. Okay. The book to get all the nuggets, but give us just a little synopsis of what your chapter is about.
Okay, so my chapter is called Girl, Just Grieve. So basically it's talking about my journey after losing my mom and the process of learning how to grieve and how to do that in a healthy way so that I could not, I'm going to use the word stay in a corner. I didn't want to stay in a corner. I didn't want to stay isolated and sheltered. I wanted to be able to keep living. So it's about a little bit about my journey. And I give a little bit of tips on, hey, this is what you need to do to just grieve. And it's okay to grieve. It's okay to mourn the person that you lost. It doesn't mean anything negative about you. It's okay.
I love your chapter because you take us on your personal journey, right? And I think it's one thing as a therapist, you know, we can talk to people about their situation, but it's a whole nother thing when you've experienced it, right? And so it's the difference of talking at you versus talking with you. And as I read your chapter, I felt like you were talking with us. You were talking to us, you know, you were talking with the audience because you were able to take your journey and literally walk us through your journey of how you got to that place. One, you know, just remembering some of the things you wrote, you talk about when I realized, oh snap, I'm not grieving and I need to grieve. I need to allow myself to have this space and I need to go on this journey unapologetically. Talk to us a little bit about, one, what would you say is your definition of grief? And two, what was a breaking point for you where it was just like, okay, something has to change. Like, I have to do this for my well-being.
Well, the basic definition is grief is just a process after loss. It includes all the emotions. It includes all the actions. It just includes all the thoughts. It's just a process after loss. And for me, when it clicked, like, okay, we need to do something for you, I think it was realizing how I was feeling. I was feeling alone. My mom was my best friend. So when she died, and she died in such an unpredictable way, you read about it more in the book, she died in a very unpredictable way that I was just in shock. And I couldn't function the way that I was functioning before. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it was an eye-opening thing that the things that I was doing before that seemed to have so much purpose didn't seem to have the same type of purpose in that moment.
Yeah.
I was pouring into my work, pouring into ministry, pouring into caring and doing all this stuff for others. And in that moment, I realized, where is everybody? Why is no one doing the things that I would do for them? Why are they not doing it for me? And in that moment, it's like, well, you're not even doing it for you.
Come on.
So I had to realize that I need to start setting some healthy boundaries and actually prioritize what's actually important. I need to prioritize my family, my children, my relationship with my husband, prioritize my relationship with God, and even more importantly, prioritize me. Because I depended so much on my mom to be the one that would always take care of me. And I realized, hey, she's not here to take care of you
Mhm.
anymore. If
Mhm.
anything goes wrong, it is on you, and your kids need you. And they're
Yeah.
not really going to have you if you're not you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. You know, when you talk about, especially when you talk about prioritizing you, right? And that's where this whole idea of selfish came out of, right? It's not selfish in the true sense of, oh, it's all about me. I have no regard for other people, what they're going through. But the reality is, you know, I think about when Jesus says to love your neighbor as you love yourself, right?
Mhm.
That's so powerful and so profound, because I can't love somebody if I don't first love myself. If I'm supposed to love my neighbor as I love myself, I have to imagine Jesus was not talking about if you don't love yourself, if you treat yourself like trash, that's how you treat your neighbor. I
Mhm.
have to imagine that when he said that, he was thinking in terms of the greatest person that you'll take care of is yourself, and you'll invest in yourself, and you love yourself so deeply, then you can then love your neighbor with that same kind of deep love, right? And so it's okay. And I want to talk to a Christian. It's even biblical to put yourself first, because
Mhm.
I can't love other people if I don't love
Mhm.
people get the overflow of what's on the inside of me. And so when I prioritize myself in seasons of having to focus on, you know, as doctoral students, right? Like we're
Mhm.
in a place where we're having to prioritize some things, right? And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
it sucks. But when these papers are due, when we got to show up to class and the rigor of the work and all that we're doing, listen, this is the season of selfishness for us. I'm
Mhm.
still going to show up and you know, be the best wife that I can be, and you know, when God blesses me with children and all of that. But right now I have to prioritize me and where I am. And
Mhm.
so I have to be selfish in terms of making sure that my self-care is on point. I think of it in terms of, you know, everybody say, you know, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Mm.
My philosophy is you can't pour from a full cup either. If my cup is full, that means I have all that I need. And once
Mhm.
I start to pour out, I'm drained again. But when that
Mhm.
cup is overflowing,
Mm.
now everybody around me gets to experience the overflow of what I have. And as long as that cup continues to overflow, I'll never run out, so then I can serve better. But the
Mhm.
moment my cup is full and I start pouring out, then I got to start pulling away again, because I got to start getting my fill. And
Mhm.
who knows how long it may take to fill. So it's not even about pouring from a full cup, it's about pouring from an overflowing cup.
Mhm. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. It's so powerful. Where would you say, like in your journey of grieving, in this journey of self-care for you, when did you notice for yourself a turning point and being able to say, okay, I'm getting better, like something is shifting?
Ooh, that's rough. Because when it comes to grief, there's never really this element of, oh, I'm completely healed, I'm completely done, I'm
Mm-hmm.
all good, everything's just
Mm-hmm.
perfect. And I
Yeah.
think that's a very important element to add in this.
Yeah.
Grief, again, is just a process after loss. And we say we grieve because we loved. And as much as you loved is as much as you will grieve.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have all the emotions and all the feelings. I think for me, in knowing that I was in a healthy place of grieving, is recognizing that I was actually in control of what I needed to do for me. I was in control of the boundaries I was setting. I was in control of who I was letting into my life and who I was pouring into. I was in control over making sure that I was doing, it's going to sound like silly things, but my mom used to always make comments about, Brittany, you're not taking good care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So after she died, I was getting my eyebrows done at least once a month. I've been doing
Mm-hmm.
massages at least once a month.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Looking at what I'm eating and being intentional about eating the different things. I've been trying to do exercising at least 5 minutes a day, every day, doing
Mm-hmm.
different things that I feel like I'm in control over. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
so you're grieving. And I think another important element was, and I'm still working on it. So it's not like, oh, I'm at the end of the journey and it's
Mm-hmm.
all good, we're there. But it's sharing that I'm grieving. That's
Mm,
really
I
big.
love it.
Sharing that I'm grieving, saying that, hey, my mom died and my world is not longer the same. I do miss her. I
Yeah.
do still cry. Sometimes I still sing songs just
Yeah.
thinking about her. showing that, hey, I'm still a strong Christian. I believe in God. I love him. I know he's coming back and he's going to take us away. I know all these different things, and I can still miss my mom, and it's okay.
Come
That's when
on.
I knew. I was like, okay, you're in a good place, because you realize that you can grieve and
Yeah.
still be you.
Yeah. I love that. I think back to the time where my first pregnancy, I lost it at 4.5 months, pretty late term. And it was a pretty rough situation. And at the time, I was a therapist. I was licensed in the ministry. So I was a minister. And so I remember this guilt of, and when I say I was losing it, like my anxiety was at an all-time high. Like, I mean, I was in a corner, like balled up like a baby, like crying. Like I was nervous to go outside. I was nervous to be around people. Like my husband could not leave my side. Like it was so bad. And I remember just this great guilt of, man, you're a therapist, man, you're a minister, man, you're a woman of God, like you're the strong friend, you're the strong, daughter or whatever, like you should know better. And there were times that people around me who loved me would allude to those things, like, come on, like get up, all the things or whatever. And what people don't understand is that when you're grieving, grief is one of the strongest emotions and processes that you will ever go through in your life. And when you are grieving, it is so unpredictable, right? And so I know that we have this, in the field, we have the stages of grief and all of that. But man, let me tell you that there's some stages that are missing. Yeah. Man, let me tell you how unpredictable it is. Like, it's just unpredictable. And for me, it manifested with all of this fear and anxiety, right? And I now know that I was grieving, but I had to get to a point where I released myself of guilt. I released myself of shame and leaned into the fact that I'm human, right? Because as believers, and then as those who are in the profession, it's like a double whammy. It's like, God is good, pray about it. All these things, like we say, or whatever the case is, not really giving thought to what it is that we're actually saying. And we're asking people to go through an extremely horrible situation and have no feelings about it and act like nothing happened. That's not realistic. That's not humanity. If God didn't want us to experience these emotions, he would have never gave them to us. Simple as that, And so, when you talk about getting to a place, it's like you have these little indicators along the way that I am getting better. I'm getting to a better place. Because I remember when I couldn't see the sunshine outside. The sun was shining bright, but I couldn't see it. I remember I still have the image in my mind from those, 8 years ago now. I still have the image in my mind with the first day I saw the sunshine. After months of not being able to see it. I remember where I was. I went to the mall with my husband and it was packed, and we got out the car and something said looked up, and I looked up and I saw the sunshine. Yeah. And from that moment, I can pinpoint from that moment was a pivotal moment, and then I was able to pick myself up and I was able to keep going. So just those key indicator moments, I think that is so important. Like you said, like when I recognize I'm better, I'm better. I'm never going to get over the loss, because we're never going to get over that. But I'm in a better place. I'm in a better place. Yeah. What would you say to somebody who is grieving or who has experienced this major loss and they're having a really hard time coming to terms with their feelings, dealing with the feelings associated with it, and feeling like I can't go on, that life is going to be unbearable to live because of this loss in my life? What would you say to that person?
Of course, natural response is, I'm sorry for your loss, but also diving into, it's okay to experience all the feelings that you're experiencing. You're having those feelings for a reason right now. And it's just to be aware of them and let them be, because they're there for a reason. You loved your loved one. And as you're experiencing these different emotions, lean in on your support. Talk to others about what's going on. Talk to people who are going to validate your feelings and validate your experience, because you are going through a valid experience, because your world has changed. And I'm sorry that it will never be the same, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to be a good life.
Come on.
So let yourself feel your feelings, It's going to be okay. Our feelings only last for a few seconds. They don't last for forever.
They don't last forever.
They don't last forever. Deal with your feelings. Take care of yourself while you're grieving, because your grief is taking a lot out of your body. So you need to overflow and pour all that different stuff back in so that you can be able to do what it is that you need to do.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Listen, everybody, I hope that today's conversation was beneficial for you and understanding that it's okay to grieve. Guess what? Everybody at some point in their life is going to go through this. You can't get out of this life without experiencing grief. Maybe there's some other emotions that you can get away with never having experience, but at some point you're going to lose something, right? And let's be clear, grief is not just the loss of a loved one. You can grieve a job. You can grieve an expectation that wasn't met. Like, there are so many different things that you can grieve. You can grieve a life that never was. And so even understanding this grief, while Brittany shares her story and she's talking about the loss of her mom, I want you to be able to read her chapter and be able to see how it applies to any loss that you may have experienced in your life, right? Because loss is loss and loss is hard, no matter what that loss looks like. And so I hope that today's episode was helpful for you, and that you guys will understand that to grieve is to be human, and to be human is to grieve. Listen, that's it. To grieve is to be human, and to be human is to grieve. Listen, make sure that y'all get your copy of Girl, Be Selfish. I promise you, ladies, listen, I've been saying this all along. I don't call this a book. It is a tool. It is a tool in your arsenal towards wellness, because there's 21 different stories of these women who are just pouring out their hearts, who are pouring out their expertise, and who are pouring out their lived experience and how self-care has helped them in their journey to being a better them. But what I love about every chapter, nobody ended the chapter saying, I have arrived, I've made it. Everybody has ended their chapter with, listen, I'm still on this boat, but guess what? I'm going to keep rowing until I make it. And so listen, thank you all so much for listening. Brittany, how can the people get in contact with you so that they can get a copy of the book?
You can send me an email at bhill-morales@gmail.com. And you can also follow me on Facebook. You can follow my company, TNB Family Counseling.
Listen, I will make sure that all of Brittany's information will be in the show notes so that you will be able to contact her and get your book. Yes, I'm yelling at y'all. Make sure y'all get your copy of the book, because I promise you it is going to be life-changing. But again, Brittany, thank you so much for joining me on this episode.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for your transparency and sharing your journey, sharing a journey that's so close to your heart. We appreciate you doing that, because that's not always easy. But like you say, it is a mark of your healing, and it's an indicator of where you are and where you're going to go in your journey. So thank you so much. We appreciate that. Listen, y'all, get a copy of the book. Make sure that you like and you subscribe to the podcast on all of the stations. We have so many more episodes coming. We're coming back with another episode next week with another author. It just has been a wonderful movement. I hope that you all are learning and growing from what we've been able to pour out, and that you guys continue to stay selfish in all that you do. Bye, family. We'll talk to you soon.